This is my Garmin GPS Map 60 CSX. This is quite an old device, and I believe it's been discontinued by Garmin, but I just wanted to go over a couple of the features of this GPS which I used on my kayaking trip in Alaska. We were kayaking in the ocean. This is an inlet, and as you can see, I have a couple of waypoints logged on my GPS. The green little triangular tents are the campsites, and there's a little water faucet there. That's actually marking the location of a freshwater stream where we were able to pick up some water. This was a really useful device to have while we were kayaking. There's a couple data fields at the top which you can see I've loaded. I have the time to destination, the distance to the next waypoint, the speed, and the moving average speed. Using these data fields, I was able to figure out while we were on the water whether or not we would make the campsite or the waypoint at the time we had expected. With this information, we were able to adjust our paddling speed or find alternate campsites either before or after our planned campsite location. And to do that, we actually used the topographic map, which I have behind the device here. Because we were kayaking on the ocean, I loaded the Garmin Blue Chart map set, and it does have a bunch of boating navigational markers, which I don't fully understand, but what I did use out of this was the tide table, and that is this little circle with a wave through it. That little waypoint there is the location of tide table information, and if I use the GPS arrow, I can select the location of this tide table waypoint, and it actually shows me where the tide is based on the current time. So the current time here is 12:32, and it shows that it's actually at near the lowest point for the tide for the day, and it shows the points for the two highest tide points here. And this was really useful while we were kayaking, because what we tried to do is in the morning we try to leave at the high tide, and then we would try to arrive at our campsite at the high tide point in the afternoon. And of course they don't always line up, being in the morning and afternoon, but when they did, it was really useful for us to try to coordinate our departures and arrivals based on the tide information, because then we wouldn't have to haul the kayak as far down the shore to get to the water. And you can actually, with this tide table information, you can actually select the date here. So you could actually go to the following day, and figure out the tide information for whichever day you want. So if you were really industrious, you could actually calculate, when to leave and when you want to arrive for a whole bunch of days, or look at how the tide tables are going to match up if you have to kayak through, like a really tight choke point or something like that, where you could only pass it at the high tide. You could try to look at it in advance to know when you had to arrive at that point to pass through that point at the high tide. Going back, you can see that if I scroll down the inlet, you'll actually see different tide table locations, and there's one there. So you could try to pick the tide table point that is the closest to your location. And I was surprised with how many there were. I've never actually used this before, so I was quite impressed with how it worked, and I found it to be quite useful on our trip. And I hope this was useful for you. And if you have any comments, please put them in the comment box down below. Thanks.